Okay guys, welcome back. Got a Ryobi generator. Practically new, although it doesn't look it. According to the guy who dropped it off, he used it for about 100 hours and then that was it. Hasn't been able to get it to start since. I did a quick triage on it while he was here. I think he was trying to trade this one in for one of the other ones that I've fixed that work, and get some credit toward it. And I did give him $50 credit, but we quickly figured out what happened here. He pointed out that there were some plastic pieces kind of hanging out of the recoil. So I popped that recoil off, and basically what came out was this. That is the fan, the cooling fan, completely disintegrated. So what happened was the fan did this. The engine kept running until it overheated, at which point most likely something happened in the top end. I'm guessing the valves or head gasket, or maybe even the top end cracked. Haven't seen any signs of cracking, but the compression sounds funny when I pull the recoil. So and it doesn't feel like there's really any compression to speak of. So before I throw in the towel and say this is a parts machine, I do want to dig into it. I will open up that valve cover, check with a gauge what the compression is, and see what we get, and make a decision at that point. No bueno. It's not on zero. I'd have to say it's about 8 pounds of pressure. No good. This, I'm sure, has a compression release, but I'd still expect it to be around 60. So we're losing a lot of compression somewhere. That is a mess. So that is baked on oil from some extreme heat. I'm not really sure how much heat is required to do that, but that could be keeping the valves from closing for sure. Let me get this on top dead center and see if the valves are way out of adjustment. Well, the valves move. That's good. Yeah, so the exhaust might be a little bit loose, but nothing ridiculous. Okay, so now with the tins off, you can really kind of see that the head gasket is blown, and it looks like the head might be lifted a little bit on the bottom, so potentially the bottom bolts stretched out. Okay, so I went to loosen these, and they're actually already loose. Not this loose, I did turn them out a few times, but clearly the overheating loosened these up quite a bit, which is why the head gasket blew. So you can kind of see, well, the gasket right here where it just burned up. So there's really not much material left here. Also, the head was loose. So, I mean, this really had no chance. And so definitely a lot of compression was getting lost out of there. Let me just rotate this piston and see what the bore looks like. Oh, that looks great, actually. I don't see any scoring on there. All right, so I torqued the head back down. First time I did a compression test, it was basically zero. It was just barely off of that zero pin. Anyway, still is a blown head gasket, but I'm curious if tightening it down is going to make any kind of a difference. Not bad. It's 50 pounds. All right, as I was cleaning the top end, you know, all that baked on oil, I was kind of wondering what the oil looked like on the bottom end. And I pulled the cap, and I do not see any oil. There must be something down there, right? It has a low oil shutdown, so it was running when it failed. So I would like to think there's something down there. So I'm going to pull this plug out, see how much exactly is in there. All right, so not quite as bad as I thought. This oil is very thick and tarry. I'm guessing it's just a 30 weight. It's pretty cold in here, so it took quite a while to get this oil out. This is supposed to be 37 ounces. You know, I'm not sure exactly how much came out, but I'm guessing it's at least half that. Okay, so for the record, about 18 ounces came out. Okay, so there's a meter here on the front called system monitor. And, I noticed it looked a little bit odd when I first got it, but I wasn't really paying much attention to it. Anyway, now that I'm waiting for the head gasket to come, I thought I'd take a closer look. And this is... it went thermonuclear. You can kind of see the plastic all bent, and the display is melted and showing some of the display behind it. So, this monitor meter thing needs to come out. So I'm just going to pull these these screws, and see if I can pop that out and or disconnect it. I just don't want to leave it connected, knowing that there's some sort of short in there. Yeah, so here's the back side. You can see some more heat damage. It's kind of bulged too at the bottom. So the way this is supposed to come out is you push these tabs in on the sides here, and it should come out the front. Given the shape that it's in now, I'm not really sure what's going to happen. Alright, took a little persuasion, but I got it out. And I also removed the plastic case, and kind of surprised actually, this circuit board looks pretty clean. Not that I'm an expert on circuit boards, but there's a little scrape there on the top right. I did that, and I think I destroyed the capacitor getting the plastic off. But I'm not seeing any burn marks. So it's kind of odd to me that plastic case that surrounded this was completely melted in the front and in the back. Looking at this now, I would say, if I put a new capacitor on there, this may actually work, but I don't have extra capacitors, so I'm just going to focus on getting this thing to make power, and I'll just order a new one if everything else comes back. All right, it's here, 6 weeks later. This is why I like working on things that are, like a carburetor. It's easy to fix, I got the parts, no waiting. Anyway, Ryobi parts seem to be hard to come by, at least by third parties. I ordered this head gasket from someone, a company down in Texas. They're one of the only companies that said they could even get it. So 6 weeks later, they sent it in a padded envelope. And to be exact, it was 3 padded envelopes, but, for a head gasket, it should really be, in a box or something a little bit more sturdy. Anyway, you can probably guess what happened. This head gasket got tacoed and is no good. So they're going to be getting a call from me tomorrow. But that's okay. Because 4 weeks into it, I kind of lost patience with this company. I called Ryobi directly and ordered the part. And it came in a week. So I do have a good head gasket. So we're good to proceed. And of course you might be asking yourself, if I've had it for a week, why haven't I installed it? And the answer is, well, it's a couple answers, but the main one is I didn't know the torque specs for this machine, and I couldn't find them anywhere online. So, I did a bit of research. I looked at Honda's, the GX 390, 25 foot-pounds, and this engine seems to be a clone of that, so I was just going to do 25. I looked at Tecumseh, I looked at Briggs and Stratton, and they're all kind of landing, there was a wide range. I'd say Honda was the highest at 25, and the lowest I found was like 15, which is on some of the Briggs. Tecumsehs are a little bit more, like around 16, 17, so on and so forth. So there was a pretty big range between 15 and 25, but I figured, I'd do at least 20, maybe 25. But I ended up calling Ryobi directly to see if they could tell me what the number was, and they did. About 5 days ago, they told me it was 110 inch-pounds, which I thought was ridiculous. I mean, that's about 8 or 9 foot-pounds. I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I asked them to double check, they confirmed. So whatever, I thanked them, hung up, and proceeded to immediately call back and talk to someone else. And I didn't tell them, that I'd called before, and they came back after a while and said, yeah, 110 inch-pounds. So I just took it for what it's worth and thought about it, and really didn't want to waste my time installing the only head gasket I have, and putting it all back together just for it to blow out again. Anyway, I did call back today because I forgot to ask what the valve clearance was, and although I measured it before taking the head off, the bolts were already stretched and obviously overheated, so I couldn't really trust the measurement I took. And anyway, the guy did confirm what I thought, which was 7 thousandths exhaust clearance and 5 thousandths on the intake. After some time, he did come back and said that the torque for the head is 40. 40 what? He couldn't tell me. So I asked him to send me the manual, the service manual, and he did. I'm not sure if he was supposed to, but he sent it. So in case you're wondering, this is who makes the engines. I don't even know if I can say this. Chongqing Rado Power. And he said it was the the R420 engine. It's a 420cc. This covers all their engines between R80 and the 440cc. So, I was able to locate the valve clearance, which this is for the 420. And these are all in, I guess, millimeters. So it's a 0.15, 0.20, which converts to the 5 and the 7 thousandths of an inch. Good. And then I flipped over to the torque section, and the cylinder head for the R270 through 440 should be 40, plus or minus 3. No units of measure, nothing here indicating what the unit measure is. But after flipping through this whole thing, there is nothing referencing inch pounds or foot pounds. It's all metric. So I'm fairly confident this is a metric number, and that converts to about 29 foot-pounds, give or take a few foot-pounds. So that's what I'm going to go with, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but the machine isn't going to run at 110 inch-pounds. That I know for sure. So, I think we're in pretty good shape. I didn't mark it, but actually in this manual too, they talk about what the compression should be with the compression release. And again, it was in like megapascal, which converts to PSI to about 58 PSI. And that last test I ran, it was at around 50 with the blown head gasket just tightened down. So I feel pretty good that the new gasket will definitely bring us up closer to that 58 number. And, my gauge is a cheap Harbor Freight one, so who knows? 50 could mean 58, but anything near 58 is good. So enough talking. Let's get this thing back together. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened, but you missed a little bit. So I ended up pulling the air shroud off to install the new fan. And in order to get that fan on there, I had to take this cup off. And this, according to the service manual, is torqued down to close to 100 foot-pounds. And I could pretty much twist that nut off with my hand. So I'm guessing that's why the fan failed. It was probably just shaking and rattling until it broke apart. Anyway, I put a piece of rope down the cylinder and tightened this down to the proper torque spec, and now we're just ready to put stuff back together. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this throttle down a bit. I really don't know what led to the fan failure. You know, it could be an over rev condition. You know, and I had the throttle spring disconnected, so if I didn't hook it up exactly right, it could run faster than I would like. So I'm going to back it off. Something is not right. I get spark no matter what. Okay, so I had to pull the air shroud off again to take a look at the magneto. This wire here kind of ran behind here close to the head, and it's supposed to be plugged in here, which grounds out the magneto. It was not plugged in, and as you can see, it got pretty charred. So I need to, the insulation still looks good, so I'm just going to cut the wire as close to the connector as I can and see if I have something else I can get onto there. Okay, so now we got engine on. engine off. Okay, it's all back together. Let's bring it outside and see what it does.
If you'll blow up or not.
All right, stand back. I don't know what it's gonna do. Didn't sound very good. Okay, well the good news is it starts and runs, sounds pretty good, makes power, has a cooling fan, and the off switch works. However, the governor is not really working that well. When the engine's off, it goes to full throttle, which is how it's supposed to be. And when the engine turns on, the governor closes the throttle so that it's not over revving. And it does that. But as the engine speed slows down, it's supposed to let the throttle open, and it's not. That throttle is just shut. So I'm not really sure why that would be. I actually cranked the throttle spring out quite a bit before starting it for the first time, and it was over revving a little bit. So I have a feeling that the governor is just not pushing as hard as it should. You know, so when I tighten this throttle spring, the engine starts to over rev, and the governor just can't counteract that spring enough. So unfortunately, I think there is some internal damage, you know, which isn't something that I care to fix. You know, it really requires this to be broken down into every single little piece to fix that. So I think this is going to be a parts machine, but you know, we did go through quite a bit, and you know, for some people out there, I think, you know, it was trying to fix their top end or their off switch or their blower fan. You know, this will show them how to do that, but it will not show you how to fix the governor. And anyway, hope this helps someone, and thanks for watching. All right, much better. So you might be wondering, what did I do? It's actually been about 4 weeks. And, initially when I was struggling, I just brought it back to the garage, tried resetting the governor, and same result. The engine was over revving. It was getting up to around 67 hertz. And it would start off pretty normal, the speed, and it would just keep increasing as the engine warmed up. So I was going to do a part 2 on this video showing a governor replacement. Earlier today I was working on a power stroke generator, which is basically the same thing as this. It had fuel problems. I fixed that, started it up, and that one was racing too. Even worse, it was getting up to 71 hertz. So after looking into that for a bit, I finally figured out the throttle plate was hanging and it couldn't close all the way. It would get about 85% closed and then that was it. So I got to thinking, maybe that's the problem here. And that actually wasn't the problem, but it was carburetor related. The carburetor was the only thing on this machine I probably didn't touch. And as you can probably see, it's nice and clean now. I did service it. The issue was the idle set screw was driven in too far. So it was driven in and kind of holding it at a minimum speed of about 60 hertz when the engine was cold. But as it warmed up, the engine would run better and it would start running faster. And the governor was trying to close the throttle plate, which is why the governor wasn't really moving even when I put a load on it. The whole time it's just trying to close, and it couldn't because it was hitting this stop. So I'm glad I did not open this engine just to discover that. Usually always comes back to the carburetor, and I should have taken a look at it sooner. Anyway, I hope this video helped someone. Thanks for watching.